This is the Barry Richards Show. WBSM On Demand.
Without further ado,
WBSM presents The Barry Richards Show. Streaming live on WBSM.com and the WBSM app. Call 508-996-0500. Text us using App Chat on the WBSM app. Now, The Barry Richards Show.
Someone calls on me, and every now and then I spend my time at climbing for some crystals falsely, and then along comes Mary, and does she want to give me kicks anymore?
All right, 12:16 on a Tuesday afternoon, 508-996-0500, and thank you for, I believe it was Ken that filled in yesterday. I had to leave town real quick yesterday, and not for the reasons that you think. No, actually, my wife's uncle passed away, so we had to go to a funeral out in western Massachusetts, out in Pittsfield. Love that part of the state. Beautiful day out there. I don't know what the weather was like here, but it was 80 degrees and sunshiny out in Pittsfield yesterday. Just a gorgeous day. Hopefully, you experience that kind of weather around here as well. My wife's uncle, 91 years old. I mean, you can't, great life, 3 great kids. Beautiful home, great career, beautiful wife who passed away a couple of years ago, and so it was a good life. And it was I mean, you know, to the extent that it can be, an upbeat funeral yesterday. It was a time of remembering good times and good people. So, but we're back at it today. And is it just me, or does something about images of people dressed in traditional Muslim garb rioting on our college campuses and preventing authorities and students who have paid a lot of money to attend those colleges access to those colleges? And something about that just is like kind of spooking me here today, especially in New York. And, you know, here we are, 23 years out from 9/11, and we've got, and we are allowing folks in traditional Muslim garb to be, I don't know, just, Meanwhile, anti-Israeli protesters taking over an administrative building this morning at Columbia University in New York. Why did they just clear this place out and then hold on to it? A number of other campuses have been cleared out today, probably as a result of what we're seeing in New York. But UNC, Yale, a couple of others have been cleared out. No protesters, no encampments. Not Columbia. Saw some video this morning on social media of these folks in their traditional Muslim garb telling students, Jewish students, they were not allowed to enter the campus. And this was at Columbia, also at UCLA out in California. 2 of the larger blue voting blocks in America. Video footage posted to X showed anti-Israel protesters carrying barricades into Hamilton Hall at Columbia University this morning. In its Telegram channel within our lifetime, Palestine protested an announcement calling for protection of the anti-Israel encampment on the campus. Student organizers have called on everyone to come to Columbia tonight and defend the encampment after administration's threats this morning. The group wrote in a post on the channel. Other videos posted to the X app showed anti-Israel protesters smashing the glass doors of Hamilton Hall. So people can be heard chanting, "Disclose, divest, we will not stop, we will not rest." Anti-Israel protesters were photographed hanging pro-Palestinian posters from the windows of the building. Protesters were videotaped hanging a banner from the windows of the building that read Intifada, as anti-Israel protesters can be heard chanting "Free, free, free, free Palestine" from the river to the sea. The takeover comes after the university announced it was suspending students after previously asking protesters involved in the anti-Israeli encampment to leave the university. An initial encampment was started at Columbia back on April 17th, and of course it spread throughout the country like a cancer. Not for nothing, because when you're young and stupid, or if you're a professional antagonist or part of a political, international political movement, I guess you don't think that far ahead. But exactly what do they think they're going to get out of this? Has anybody thought about that for a moment? What exactly is going to occur? What is Columbia University all of a sudden today going to say, okay, that's it. Yeah, you're right. We're going to divest. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And, well, you can have the damn building. We didn't want it anyway. Is Joe Biden, if anybody can find him, why hasn't Joe Biden addressed the nation on this stuff, too? I mean, this isn't, your traditional kind of protest. This is something a little bit more than that. It's a little bit frightening. But why has the president of the United States not addressed the nation? White House issued a fairly benign statement this morning saying, we condemn violence. We condemn violence. Yeah, big deal. Where's the president? President should be on national TV. But what do these people think? That Biden is going to go on national TV and say, okay, that's it. We are no longer friends with Israel. We're going to suspend a trade. We're going to suspend aid. We're going to suspend everything. You kids are right. What do they actually think they're going to get out of this? Faculty members seen blocking certain students and press from entering the school's anti-Israel encampment on Monday. You've probably seen some of this video on television. Again, people dressed in traditional Muslim garb on an American campus telling students and press that they're not allowed to go on the campus. Fox News Digital witnessed Avi Weinberg, an economics student at Columbia, leading a small group of his Jewish classmates, all trying to enter the encampment on the South Lawn. However, Columbia faculty wearing orange high-visibility staff vests with taped faculty and staff labels on the backs were seen locking arms as they patrolled who was allowed in. Students who have only slept here are allowed in, one woman told the Grid. The woman got into a combative exchange with one of the students, insisting she knew who had not slept in the encampment and refused to let them in. The human chain of faculty then turned their backs to the students, who then, in turn, called the police. We have to abide by university policy, Weinberg shouted. We should all be able to go onto that lawn. The faculty refused to answer when asked why the students were not being allowed on the lawn. Members of the crowd suggested it was unfair that faculty were determining who could and could not go on to the area when it is part of the university campus that they pay to attend. So this morning, after the takeover of Hamilton Hall, Columbia issued a statement announcing that it is closing the campus indefinitely. Surrender! In a statement hours after anti-Israel agitators stormed the iconic Hamilton Hall and barricaded its doors, the university said it would remain closed until circumstances allow otherwise. Effective immediately, access to the Morningside campus has been limited to students residing in residential buildings on campus and employees who provide essential services to campus buildings, labs, and residential student life. For example, dining, public safety, and building maintenance staff. There is no additional access to the Morningside campus, a statement from the university said. The safety of every single member of this community is paramount. We thank you for your patience, cooperation, and understanding. Why has the president of the campus, president of Columbia, not called on the governor of New York to bring in the National Guard and clear that place? I mean, the optics are already terrible. If you are afraid that the optics are going to be bad, if all of a sudden the National Guard comes in with clubs and tear gas and starts clearing the campus out for those who paid for it, what do you think the optics look like now? A bunch of people running around in traditional Muslim garb paying Americans that they can't go into their campus and holding a campus building hostage. What do you think those optics look like? Jessica Schwalb witnessed the scene of the takeover, captured it for the entire world. Says silence from law enforcement and campus leadership has left students feeling alone. She was on Fox this morning, Fox and Friends, I think the show is. It was almost like a scene from The Shining, she said. Windows smashing. I also saw a student who was trying to prevent them from continuing to barricade the doors, and then he was essentially corralled by another human chain of pro-Palestinian protesters and basically lifted up and shoved out and called a Zionist. He was physically assaulted, she continued. And again, there's utter silence from public safety, from New York police. So we feel alone on this campus. These are people who are living on this campus. They paid good money to live on this campus. Jonas Dew, who is the editor-in-chief of the campus publication, the Columbia Sundial, also on Fox and Friends this morning, telling Lawrence Jones and Ainsley Earhart the entire scene was surreal. I was in Butler Library, our main library, getting ready for finals, finishing up an assignment. I walk out, the encampment is alive, everyone's marching around, and everyone's saying they're going to occupy Hamilton Hall. And instantly I knew that this was an escalation. Because back in 1968, this was the big event that put Columbia on the map in terms of being a very activist school, and it really did a lot of harm to the university's reputation. Dew's remark harkened back to the anti-Vietnam War protest from 1968 when demonstrators similarly took over the building. The White House, as I mentioned, released a statement this morning condemning the takeover of Hamilton Hall. No Joe, though. No Joe. No Joe. Why is Joe not? Why is the president of the freaking United States not on television addressing the American people over this? Bunch of folks in traditional Arab Muslim garb taking over our institutions, calling for death to Israel, calling for death to Americans, threatening people, throwing bottles at police, and the president has yet to come out and address this. And this has been going on for weeks. But the White House issued a statement that somebody in the basement wrote on Joe's behalf. And the statement condemns the takeover of Hamilton Hall and the use of the term intifada by the protests, which essentially means the destruction of the Israeli people. President Biden has stood against repugnant anti-Semitic smears and violent rhetoric his entire life. He condemns the use of the term intifada, and he has the other tragic and dangerous hate speech displayed in recent days. White House Deputy Press Secretary Andrew Bates said in a statement. They couldn't even get the press secretary. They had to get the deputy press secretary. This is how important this is to the Biden administration. And not only do we not get the president, but we don't even get his press secretary. We get the deputy press secretary to write and issue a statement. President Biden respects the right to free expression, but protests must be peaceful and lawful. Forcibly taking over buildings is not peaceful. It is wrong, and hate speech and hate symbols have no place in America. The assistant press secretary said. Trump, meanwhile, condemned the anti-Israeli protests this morning on his way back into court, and comparing them to Charlottesville and January 6th. Trump argued that the Charlottesville protest from 2017 was peanuts compared to the anti-Israel protest at Columbia University. He went on to question whether the Justice Department would work to prosecute campus protesters as aggressively as they have protesters who participated in the January 6th storming of the U.S. Capitol. The Biden protests that are going on are horrible. It's all caused by him because he doesn't know how to speak. He can't put two sentences together, Trump said. The colleges are being overrun, He said he ran because of Charlottesville. Charlottesville is peanuts compared to what we're looking at now. There's a lot of people being hurt very badly. I wonder if there's going to be the same kind of treatment they gave January 6th. Let's see how it all works out. I think I can give you the answer right now, he said. Meanwhile, a new Harvard-Harris poll showing that 80% of registered voters in the U.S. believe that the students and protesters who call for violence toward Jews should be suspended. 80%. When asked about whether students and professors who actually engage in physical violence, such as assaulting journalists, which took place last week at UCLA, 83% of those polled said participants should be suspended. Other poll results on the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas terrorists in Gaza remain consistent with previous results. 80% of respondents back Israel, just 20% back Hamas. 72% said that Israel should move forward with an operation in Rafah to finish the war with Hamas, doing its best to avoid civilian casualties, even though there will be casualties. Only 28% say Israel should back off now and allow Hamas to continue running Gaza. For the record, the Biden administration is opposed to an invasion of Rafah or an attack on Rafah. Harvard professor and president emeritus, former Harvard president Larry Summers, called for close investigations on the funding sources of the recent protests on campuses and for a lot of soul searching. After criticizing some of the actions of faculty and stating that there is a lack of accountability for the actions of some members of school faculty, Summers stated, "I think there needs to be a lot of soul searching about the way that universities are governed. And my own sense is that trustees, who are the ultimate fiduciaries, who make all the rules about tenure and everything else, have been much too passive through too much of this episode." (508-996-0500). Thank you for hanging on. You're first this hour on WBSM.
Hey, Barry.
Hi.
What's interesting is that people don't know the birthplace of this entire thing. And when it started, it wasn't this year. This began in 2011 during the Occupy Wall Street movement. Because the social justice con was born from that movement. And that social justice con has morphed into everything. From an Israeli-Gaza conflict to George Floyd, everything. You remember in the riots in 2020, they were doing pretty much some of the same stuff. They were desecrating public statues, tearing down statues. They were burning stuff. They were rioting. They were doing the sit-ins in college. They were basically committing acts of violence and calling for acts of violence against police officers.
Well, do you remember 2016, 2015, 2016, when they were the Antifa, so-called Antifa people were storming colleges? Remember, what was his name, the gay Republican commentator? We don't hear Milo. Remember when Milo was he was set to deliver a speech? I think it was at UCLA, and they set the building on fire. And there were others too.
You remember Chaz in Seattle?
Yeah.
The Chaz movement in Seattle, in Portland. Charlottesville is the biggest thing. People don't realize that the same people who funded the protests from Antifa and BLM were also funding the white supremacists who were marching in Charlottesville.
Sure.
All of this is interconnected, Barry. And what you see on college campus is another growth version of the social justice con. People don't understand this. I mean, it's now infiltrated into a war in Israel and Gaza. It's infiltrated into Ukraine. It's infiltrated into every part of academia now. And the problem is it's gotten so out of control, even our own government can't stop it.
Well, go back even further. Go back to 2008 when you had Barack Obama. And he was, if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon Martin. And what did he call the police in Massachusetts? What did he call them? Stupid? Because of a raid.
They acted stupidly, yes.
Yeah.
And he's one of the godfathers of the social justice con, as is George Soros. And people don't understand this. And all of this has been created to disrupt everything from the rule of law. Social justice con has destroyed the rule of law. It's infiltrated academia, and it's poisoning these kids' brains to the point now where you see these kids destroying private property to push some movement. They don't even half these kids don't even know what they're protesting.
Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. Remember that one?
Oh, yes.
What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them now? Able to march through the streets of major cities in this country, chanting, what do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them now? And nobody, including Barack Obama, who was president of the United States, or this dimwit, who's the vice president then, even thought enough to step forward because they wanted this. They fomented this.
Exactly.
And this is exactly. But, you know, the thing is, sometimes you invent a Frankenstein monster, and Frankenstein's pretty convenient for you for a while and works well for you. No. And then all of a sudden you can't control that monster anymore. And we're at a point right now where this monster that they created years ago is now destroying them. And, you know, I don't know if you heard the comments from Jim Carville over the weekend. I think it was yesterday, maybe Sunday. And he's lashing out now at what the people that got Biden elected, the young voters, right? And he's accusing them of turning on Joe Biden and saying that they would have no rights left if Trump were to win the election. And it was a post on Sunday. He said, quote, "So I hear this a lot. James, young voters are just not into this. It's two candidates. One's in his 80s. One is almost in his 80s. They're concerned about things that Washington politicians, and you just can't blame them for it." So he yelled on the video, "Oh, S word, F you." And then he goes on to berate the young people. These people are losing it. They are losing their cool because Frankenstein is destroying them, finally.
They don't realize in 2008 they elected a Marxist destructor. They let him into the party. He's morphed the party into a Marxist party, not a, quote, centrist liberal party. True liberals aren't against free speech. True liberals wouldn't be bullying some of the stuff. Most liberals support Israel through the years. They let him in. He's destroyed the party. He created the Frankenstein monster, and now that monster is literally destroying them. Carville basically knows this, but he's just pushing a front, yelling at these kids because he won't say the truth. Because if he said the truth, he would tell all his Democratic buddies, hey, we need to get away. We need to push away from this communist Marxist people in the party like the Squad. And we need to basically go back to where we were during the Clinton years, where we were centrists, we were true liberals. The Kennedy liberals, the party of Kennedy, the party of Barney Frank, that's gone now. It's completely gone.
And remember how radical we thought Barney Frank was back in the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow. It's absolutely amazing to watch this, but we are seeing the fabric of our country being shred before us. What is interesting to note, and Carville goes on to talk about this in his statement as well, when he's talking about how young black and young Hispanic voters are walking away. And he obviously is clear that where they're walking to, right? He knows where they're walking to, and he's very, very concerned about this. And, I mean, Carville was the point guy, right? He says here, Carville told Democrat operatives to tell these young people to get off your mother-blanking ass and go vote because you should vote like your entire future, and the entire future of the United States depends on it because, quite frankly, it does, and that's not an exaggeration. And then he goes on to say, it's horrifying. Our numbers among younger voters, particularly younger blacks, younger Latinos, younger people of color, particularly males. So he sees it. I mean, Jim Carville is not a stupid person. So he sees that they're losing young males that they need, blacks, Latinos, and they're walking away from the Democrats.
And he's pushing them more. Even he tells them to get off their butts and vote. Those kids see the light. They know where the Democrats are now. They know what the Democrats have been doing.
Yes.
They're becoming degenerate Marxists, and that's why they're walking away. Hence why the Democrats now are funneling all these illegals in, because they need to stay in power. Because once they lose power, they're eventually going to be just eviscerated from the political environment, because their policies are insane right now, and they created this mess. They created this mess, this social justice con, and now that it's out of control, they can't stop it. And
absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Thank you, my friend. I got to hold you right there. Appreciate it. 508-996-0500. What a great conversation to start the day off with. I got to hit a break. We're coming right back. Your calls are important. Stay on the line, 508-996-0500. We're coming.
I must have been through about 1,000,000 girls. I love 'em and I leave 'em alone.
All right, welcome back to the program. 12:43 is our time on a Tuesday afternoon. 508-996-0500 is the phone number. And so Mayor Eric Adams of New York just holding a news conference a few moments ago saying this stuff's not going to be tolerated. We're going to be sitting down with the Department of Justice this afternoon to figure out what our next step is going to be with Colombia. It's amazing. All of these problems are coming home to roost like all at once between the crime and the border and this stuff on our campuses where we've got folks dressed in traditional Muslim garb taking over our universities and threatening our country and the stability of our universities and attacking physically and verbally Jewish folks. Isn't it funny how we talked about all of the anti-Semitism that was occurring in this country, right? And, of course, they had to blame that. If you listen to the left, there was all Donald Trump and all the white supremacists, all you and me, right? We're all white supremacists. The folks that were all of a sudden coming out of the KKK closet. We're all white supremacists. So happy that we got Trump to lead us now. And what kind of and isn't it amazing how it turns out that the left was lying to you? The left is just like the left was the keep them in chains, no voting rights for Black Americans, no equal protections, none of that stuff. And all of a sudden, now the cloth is being pulled back, and we're getting to see who the real anti-Semites are in this country. And it ain't Donald Trump, and it ain't you, and it ain't me. Trump's trial, the other huge story of the day, and this is so amazing to see all of this going on in our country right now. The left is out there, and they're not even defending any of this stuff. The border has collapsed. We've been overrun by criminal immigrants. We had 4 law enforcement officers killed serving a warrant in North Carolina yesterday. A cop in Chicago killed on Sunday. The funeral was yesterday, and the family, the wife, by the way, his name was Officer Louis M. Huska, 30 years old, 30 freaking years old, killed off duty. His wife told the liberal, progressive mayor, Brandon Johnson, and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, another liberal, useless progressive, not to dare to show your faces at the funeral. Can you believe the mayor was actually going to do it? Until about an hour before the funeral, he was going to defy the wishes of the widow and go to the funeral. Finally, at the last minute, he chickened out and didn't go. But we're seeing all of this happening in our country, and it's all happening at once. We talked with the last caller about the Frankenstein monster, Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein invented the monster. What hump? And if you're familiar with the movie, never mind. Anyway, I get sidetracked really easily. So they invented they invented this monster, Frankenstein monster. Totally cool dude. Look at him. Yeah, look at this. And then all of a sudden, Frankenstein starts killing people. And Dr. Frankenstein's like, oh, my God, what did I do? I got to destroy him. Well, that's the left. And if you listen to the vulgar video from Jim Carville on Sunday, he's yelling at the at the young people. Don't stop! You gotta! F you! And you're abandoning us! And they are in panic mode, like you wouldn't believe. Dr. Frankenstein monster is chasing the Democrats, and he's going to eat them, and they know it. They know it. Chicago Police Department has made more than 1,000 arrests of Venezuelan migrants just in the first 3 months of this year. Chicago Police Department has made more than 1,000 arrests of Venezuelan migrants just in the first 3 months of this year. The sanctuary city's Venezuelan population, 40,000 have arrived since August of 2022. That's not even 2 years. 40,000 Venezuelans have entered Chicago in the last less than a year and a half, about a year and a half now, right? While newly arrived Venezuelan migrants make up just 1.5% of Chicago's 2.6 million residents, they have accounted for 11.11% of all arrests in the first 3 months of this year, when officers recorded the arrestees' country of origin. And when they didn't, well, we don't know whether they were from Venezuela. Chicago City Councilman, Democrat Raymond Lopez, who has advocated ending the city sanctuary policy and stopping the flow of illegal immigration, told the Chicago Tribune that, quote, quality of life laws are not being enforced and crime is breaking out around migrant shelters as a result. They can't get control. Can't get control. Anyway, the trial, to see the contrast of what's happening in our country right now, right? We've got all of this going on. Immigrants pouring across the border, committing all kinds of crime. We got the National Guard, former National Guard Armory up in Lexington, Massachusetts, now being used or is going to be used as a illegal immigrant shelter. Can you believe this? What have we run out of? Have we run out of little neighborhood community centers to kick the minority kids out of? So we've got to take the National Guard Armory building. Inflation, unparalleled crime. You've got transgenders rolling on the floor with your kids in school. I mentioned last week before the weekend, I think it was on Friday, about the transgender story time out in Western Massachusetts, where the transgender is jumping up and down with the kids singing, "If you're happy and you know it, yell Free Palestine." This is America. You've got people in traditional Muslim garb taking over our college campuses. What, are there no planes available? I mean, just saying, thinking out loud, And while all of this is playing out, and Joe Biden is refusing to discuss this with the American people, because for some reason, I don't know why, Donald Trump is being held in a courtroom in New York. Had to miss Melania's birthday on Friday, or was it Thursday of last week? For being threatened with jail if he speaks. He was hit with $9,000 in fines today for speaking last week. The judge hit him with $9,000 in fines this morning because he spoke. How dare Trump speak? You sit there, you don't speak. In the meantime, Joe is hiding, not addressing this Muslim takeover of our campuses and everything else that's going on in this country. Trump's being fined if he opens his mouth. I mean, threatened this morning with jail by this judge. And you're seeing split screen. All of the campus rioting and violence and bottles being thrown at cops and everything else on one side of the screen, and there's Trump sitting in a courtroom where he can't campaign and challenge what's going on. The people see this. The people are not stupid. The people see what is going on. By the way, the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, actually flew to New York today to sit in the courtroom to offer some moral support to Trump while he's being persecuted and potentially going to prison for speaking his mind. According to a poll published yesterday, a Harvard-Harris poll, most voters believe the Democrats are using the government and the legal system in biased ways to politically damage Trump. Do you think the legal prosecutions of Donald Trump are fair and unrelated to politics, or do you think that Democrats today are engaged in lawfare, a campaign using the government and the legal system in biased ways to take out political opponents? A majority of 57%, including Democrats, say yes. Democrats are engaged in lawfare against Trump. 43% say, nah, everything's on the up and up. Unbelievable. I've got to take a quick break. 508-996-0500. What the hell is going on in our country? We're back after this.
My eyes of Georgia. Oh, I never laid a hand on you. My eyes of Georgia.
12:57 on a Tuesday afternoon. 508-996-0500. Let's grab another one before the news break. And you're next in WBSM. Good afternoon. Hello. Hello. Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button. Go ahead. You're next.
Hey, what is happening in our country? We certainly have lost it. And, it's a really amazing perspective on all this is if I accidentally or refuse to call somebody by their pronouns, that's considered an act of violence. Yet, if you... Now you can march, you can chant death to America, death to Jews, and that's free speech. Man, we've gone so upside down, Barry. It's just not. It's sad. It's scary. And I don't know if we're going to get it back, man.
Well, you know what? I think we needed to get to this point, and I think we are reaching the top of that hill, and then we're going to start rolling back down. I don't know where we're going to wind up from all of this, but I think people are waking up. It's becoming evident.
So. Yeah, I believe they are. I just hope it's not too late. I think we're already on the other side of the cliff. I don't know if we can stop the fall. I really don't know. But you know what's really interesting? And I really believe that black people realize that they've been dealt a really bad hand by the Democratic Party more than ever. And I believe that's going to be instrumental to turning this country around if we can. Well,
look, as long as we're alive and we got life in our body and we've got the will and the desire to turn this country around, I think we can do it. I think we've been in some pretty tough jams before, so I think we can do this. We've been fighting like hell to keep our country and to get it back and back on track. And I think finally the other people are starting to wake up and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe those guys weren't so crazy after all. Mm-hmm. And so we'll see where it goes, but I'll tell you what, it's going to be an interesting ride between here and there.
Between here and November, it's going to be very interesting.